Okay, kids. When I looked at the celestial dance that this week held in store for us, I went, well, there's not that many aspects that I generally play with that are going to be on the table this week. And yet, I'm going to go over to the chart right now because I think that may be the most beneficial for all of us. This is Monday, and you can you look at it and there's just all kinds of aspects going on, but generally the aspects they're not leaping out at me to say, oh, hey, pay attention to me, I'm the most important thing that's transpiring right now. And the reality is that, hang on a second, I want to make sure that this microphone is doing the right thing. Yes. Okay. Aspects. This is the aspects of these colored lines that you see going between all the different planets and stuff. This is the conversational context within which the planets are conversing with one another, that as an astrologer, we pay fairly close attention to. And the reason why is because they're important things that energetically the planets represent as parts of that we as astrologers and people in general could or should pay attention to, because they have relevance. The interpretation of those celestial beings and what they represent present to us opportunities. I think that's probably the right term for a matrix of energy within which we dwell. And we don't necessarily have to pay attention to them. We can go about our merry lives. And however, if one becomes aware of just exactly what those energy vibrations that the planets represent and how the conversations that are transpiring between them might actually affect beneficially, or maybe not so much as beneficial, the kinds of experiences that we encounter in our daily trials. Yeah, I'm using that word trials very specifically because, we get up in the morning and we're ready to start our day, and off into the world we take. The adventure begins. But what kind of adventure is it going to be today? Well, we're going to encounter people, situations, and our own capacities for what it is that we're going to represent as we interact with the energies of this everyday experience. There are influences always in the mix. And this is for us as astrologers, this is that planetary flavoring. What are they saying to one another? And is there relevance for my paying attention to how that fits into my own understanding of how I am going to express into my everyday experience, as well as might there be sometimes lingering, sometimes overt and intense energy patterns that are at work or in play that it would be helpful for me to be aware of. This is astrology. This is the dance with those celestial energies that we can either choose to ignore or actually participate in. I think that, because of the particular types of energies that are in play this week, there's an invitation to an energy signature that, even though I only see a couple of major aspects when I looked at this week, the subtle ones that are in play actually might hold a lot more significance for us if we're willing to think or live out of the box. There's a very particular reason I say that. While I generally don't do considerations related to the moon, this week, the moon, you can kind of see it down here, is traveling, and it's going to be essentially aspecting all the planets over here on this side of the chart as it moves. We're going to move the chart through the week. I'll move it back, but I'm going to move the chart. This is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Oh, by the way, let's go back to Monday. This is the one you want to pay attention to, is the moon now, because these aspects coming from the moon, they're the ones that are going to dance and alter all week long. I don't pay attention to all the spinach down in here. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and finally Sunday. You can kind of see that the moon actually is doing some substantial aspectual experiences with quite a bit, if not all, of the planets. So here we are, back on Monday. If we're going to consider the moon, we should consider it from as many factors that the moon brings into play. And normally I wouldn't bring the moon in too overtly, because it's the ruler of Cancer, and Cancer's the next month. We're right now, as you can kind of see down here, at 15 degrees of Gemini. So the sun has made it to the middle of Gemini. But the moon it's cold and wet. Now, what the heck does cold and wet mean? Cold is an energy that slows things down. If you it's a decrease in energy. Think of if things get really cold, they freeze up, so there's a stiffness there. Also, there's a quietness factor, a deceleration in the need to accomplish things. Rest. There's a good lunar thing. Think about it. Every night, that moon which is the representation of night, invites us to lie down and recharge our batteries. The rest cycle, conservation, relaxing, soothing, and healing. These are all energies that should be available to us during that night cycle where we relax and allow the rebuilding energies, the healing energies of life to revitalize our batteries. So you kind of feel an inward kind of nature. It's just drawing in. It's not so much interested in all the interplay of all that outer world action phase. Meditation. Here's another good term for the cold side of experience. Now, the wet or the moist factor that the moon represents. Moisture, water, wet. This is a signature of allowing things to come together. There's a combination of energies that are invited to play with one another. Think of wet as connection. So the moon is that cold, wet capacity of connection. It's also about moods, home, domestic nature, nurturing qualities. The image for the moon, look at it right down here. 2 arcs of consciousness, one within the other. Can you sense the feeling nature of this nurturing moon? This shows how you respond to life emotionally. Without feeling, there is no joy, no soul. Feelings are mutable, like the changing phases of the moon. The moon reacts and responds, sensitive to the life it touches. Okay, can you feel that lunar energy? Because this week, starting right out here on Monday, we have a unique aspect, and this one that you don't often see is the quintile. We have a quintile here between Pluto and Mars, and biquintiles between the moon and Mars and the moon and Pluto. So what the heck does a quintile mean? So it's a 5th harmonic, which means that you take the 360 degrees of the zodiac, divide it by 5, and you get 5 72-degree aspects. That's what a quintile is. It is, of all the aspects, think harmony, because it has to do with Venus. Venus is that planet that has the most harmonic of all the orbits of the celestial dance. A quintile, as an aspect, it is divine inspiration and creative expression, cosmic consciousness and genius, magic, play, miraculous breakthroughs of divine intervention, romance, meditation, sacredness, holiness, tapping higher orders of intelligence, spiritual gifts requiring cultivation, setting new trends, specialization, purposeful focus. And the biquintiles can also signify genius and spiritual gifts. I'm emphasizing the quintile this week because of the fact that as this week begins, we're invited into an energy that, while always potentially in play, is just a little bit more specifically on the conversation level of what the planets are saying one to another, that it could be beneficial for us to be aware of. The quintile is it talks about non-physical realms. It also talks about the invisible, spirituality, and magical, natural, harmonious things. And you can kind of see this nice little triangle of the quintile talking to the moon over here, beginning the week in Virgo. We have a lot of these pink aspects, which are septiles. And a septile is a seventh harmonic. If you take the 360 degrees divided by 7, you end up with an odd aspect of 51.43 degrees. And what a septile stand for is they stand for supernatural or alien kinds of experiences. There's the potential recognition that things arrive from other dimensions. And I want to bring this up very specifically for this particular week. The potential for tuning in to alternative energy experiences or sequences that are going to be available as we make it through the week. That, things may appear that don't generally grab our attention. And when they do, we have a choice or an option to say, whoa, where did that come from? And just at that moment where the recognition transpires, how awake to alternatives are you going to be? Will you perceive that energy signature that's attempting to get your attention from a zone that you may or may not readily recognize? What might be the effects? I can't tell you, other than it's likely not going to be something that you would generally recognize as a part of the matrix you normally dwell within. Pluto, part of that quintile triangle that we're looking at, is a level of change that is day and night. It's a dissolving, a dissolution of what was, so that something new can transpire. something new can surface that is made up of those parts that have gotten us to any particular point in our life adventure, but perhaps are no longer as useful as we once may have thought. Mars, action, impulse, energy in Aries, a sign that it has rulership in, drive and impulse are seeking to, stir the pot vigorously. And so, might there be the recognition that there are factors in play that are surfacing from what used to be, that this Martian energy is driving toward you to recognize? And we already talked about the moon, which is at the peak of this triangle. Are you going to allow that sense of awareness to awaken within you in a way that you can connect the dots of what's in play in a new and rather unique fashion that would not be available until this week? There's some magical things afoot this week that I think it would behoove us to try not to get too stuck within the parameters of, some seemingly overtly important direction or point that we are headed for that could actually keep us from perceiving what the energies of the universe are trying to awaken us to this week. Are you ready for some magic? Because if you are, this week it is really in play. When I looked at the aspects for this week, it wasn't until Friday and Saturday that I saw that, Mercury is going to be forming a square with Pluto, and Venus is going to move into a conjunction with Uranus on Saturday. But, in order to get there, we're going to just, blip on through the week. Pay attention to the moon. Tuesday, first quarter moon. There's that nice square between the sun and the moon. Across the two Mercury-ruled signs of Gemini and Virgo. There's Mercury now going direct in the last few degrees of Taurus. So from the Taurian perspective, which is where Mercury is, Mercury wants to stimulate our connection to physical matter, but more particularly to planet Earth, Mother Earth, the natural realms. And this first quarter, which often is considered a crisis in action, because the moon is increasing in size, so therefore it's developing levels of curiosity that are stimulating us to, wonder, more particularly, how can I connect this reality to me in a way? And because it's a square, you've got this, kind of a tension structure in play that says that, I want to, these are the two Mercury signs. I want to organize my thoughts in a meaningful way, Virgo, and Gemini, the other sign that's involved here where the sun is kind of, shining a very bright light on the whole idea of acquiring more awareness, looking into options as to what might be in play, the levels of curiosity that Gemini represents from that mercurial aspect are saying, I know there's more. I just feel it in my bones. There's that moon involved in it. I feel it in my bones. Bones Saturn, and Mercury right now it never really quite got back to the actual hard square with Saturn, but it's close enough to qualify as being in a square with Saturn. So Saturn's in the mix. You can feel it in your bones. These things I'm talking about resonate in the instrument of who we are. And this week I'm inviting you to really open up those channels of awareness to alternatives that we don't normally consider, because aspects of modern society in particular really, they have no control over that. And thus, if they don't have control over it, they can't control us. So the system has done everything that it can to make sure we are not paying attention to these kinds of alternatives, because, oh, Lord knows we may think for ourselves. And if we started thinking for ourselves, what might we observe about the system that has developed in our modern world? Essay question. I'm not going to answer it for you. We're all going to have our own perspectives on it, but there's a dynamic that might be in play this week that we would share with one another those observations at a meaningful level. And who knows? Remember, essay question. Okay, Wednesday. Oh, look at that fan of aspects coming out from the moon. We have a grand trine triangle between Mercury, Pluto retrograde, and the moon near the end of Virgo, near the end of Capricorn, near the end of Taurus, all earth signs saying, Earth is form and structure. The moon could be asking us with that trine aspect. Trine is a very beneficial aspect. There's a harmony in there. Things work together very specifically, and the moon may be touching this Mercury, Pluto energy conversation and saying, might there be an investigative consideration here for just how effective am I going to be able to utilize the new kind of energy that Pluto is pushing up through the surface? And here in the northern hemisphere, spring, we've had a lot of rain up here in the northwest, but spring is happening and things are shooting out of the ground like crazy. I noticed this morning that I have little green strawberries on quite a bit of my strawberry plants. I'm going to have to consider a protection for them so that the birds don't decide to come and help themselves, which they do every year. I know it's part of the cycle and they get their percentage, but it would be nice to have some more myself. So let's continue on through the week. One thing I didn't mention, we'll go back a day, is that these oppositions that are happening between the moon and sub, there's tension in those too. As Wednesday rolls over. Wednesday's a Mercury day, by the way. We have the opposition to both Neptune and Jupiter in play, because yeah, Neptune is the realm of, it's a realm of perception that attempts to pour the water of truth over situations and circumstances that we've become aware of, but need filtering. And that pouring of the water of truth over them. And, moon is a definite water element, is it's required. Not everything that we perceive has the capacity to run at the depth that this particular week is asking us to consider. And then, more oppositions. Now we have the moon in opposition to Mars and Chiron. This one, the inconjunct, I'm not going to bring that up. It's more an aspect it's a challenging aspect, because these are elements that they don't generally speak easily or effectively with one another. And so some level of compromise needs to transpire. And this would be between Venus down here in its own sign and the moon. And Venus and the moon, these are the two benefics of the zodiac. So, even though there might be a theoretical inharmony, there's still elements that desire to work with one another. And we come to Friday, and we have our nice square here. Oh no, we have a trine between Mercury and Pluto, which we've already talked about. Moon comes into square with that Pluto. There's a lot of dynamic energy. And another factor that often is, not overtly brought up, and in this case, it's a little bit wide. I was going to say it's a yod, finger of God, but it's a little wide between Neptune and Mercury, which is close to a sextile, but for a yod, it needs to be like within 1 degree, 1.125 degrees. And this is just a little wide for that. Saturday. Okay, Saturday, we come up with what kind of wonderful aspects have we got here? The moon went hiding, but we found it. And the moon basically this week is moving through Virgo, Libras, and Scorpio. And so from the perspective of the Virgoan side, we want to get organized. Our moon is attempting to present for us opportunity to really tune into how effective is the experience that I am part of, as far as connecting the dots in a way that I can grow from. As an earth sign, I want to use it in a way that I can formulate a pattern of congeniality. And then it went through Libra. Libra is the sign of what does it mean to interact with the other? Relationships, partnerships, all kinds of levels of, weighing and balancing things to find if there is or is not something that makes that fulcrum sit at the center of things, and that those things on either end of the scales are in harmony. And then finally, the moon ends up in Scorpio this week. And that asks us, are the ramifications of actually being in partnership reached a level where there is a certain intensity on board. It's an interpersonal kind of intensity that brings to the surface, what is it that we own together? And that doesn't just transpire at the physical implements that we own in our life, but think of the energy of what happens when we intimately share with one another our understanding of what it means to be in partnership. Is there enough level of honesty that what it is that can transpire at the level of that kind of connection, where what it is that is available one to another is not being hidden away in any essence from the other, so that what can be shared can grow. The Scorpio matrix is probably one of the more challenging signs of the entire zodiac, because it also represents secrecy. I'm letting that sink in, So in this sharing context, in this closeness of a shared resource level of awareness, how much secrecy are you comfortable with allowing to be in that matrix with others who are important to you? Another essay question. On this day, Saturday, the aspect that I picked up on was Venus and Uranus coming into conjunction here at 16 degrees of Taurus. And so the Venus, ruler of Taurus and Libra, wants us to find some level of harmony or be inspired by the realm of art in an effective enough way that we can have an appreciation for not just the practical side of things, but that often elusive capacity of things to inspire us. This is what art has at its core, a function to bring for us. I just looking at the symbol, the Sabian symbol from Dane Ridger's An Astrological Mandala for that particular degree. Because of the Uranus, Uranus shakes things up. That is its function. That's the initial energy of the Uranian function. At a little bit more dynamic level, what Uranus stands for, and the reason why it shakes things up is it wants to loosen our grip that we may be holding on to things with, whether it's actual physical things or ideas, enough so that we might be able to see alternatives. So Venus partnership physical resources that we might have at our avail being shaken up by this Uranian kind of energy to awaken us to alternatives. And the Sabian symbol reads, a symbolic battle between swords and torches. The keynote, refusing to depend upon the past. The seeker turns warrior, fighting anew the eternal great war. Some, particularly our Western-leaning societies, paint the picture of war in relatively harsh physical terms. I think the Great War that is being referred to here has a lot more to do with ideology, with the process of discovering what is it as a soul being that you incarnated at this particular time on Earth to discover, and is your soul quest appropriately being pursued? Another essay question. I cannot answer this for you. I can only know that that great war that seems to be transpiring has a lot more to do with the ownership of soul essence. There are factors with Tico and a lot of, the devil that have been playing cards of control on the planet to keep our souls asleep and keep them from becoming aware of the dynamism of power available to soul, in spelling out a very different alternative for how humanity might get along more effectively, not just with one another, but with all of creation. That is the great battle. So this week, we're basically taking a lunar journey. The other planets, they're tickling each other as they always do. And I could go on for a long time getting into the nitty gritty of all these tight little aspects and colorful lines that cross the chart. But the experience of this week paying attention to alternatives in our awareness that are clamoring around the peripheral areas of our energy matrix, attempting to get our attention in such ways that we might be able to expand ourselves into arenas that we either didn't know existed or felt uncomfortable with, but are there for very unique and particular reasons. This week, if you take the opportunity, we all have the the potential of presence to discover magic. I'm not talking about street magic of playing card games on people. I'm talking about a level of soul awareness that puts us in touch with everything in very unique fashion. So have a great week. And if anybody ever feels an interest in having a chart reading, I've been doing chart readings since 1969. And I have a pretty good handle on unique ways to play the astrological game. I'm still learning. I readily will admit that. But what I find is that the adventure of a chart reading with somebody is part of that discovery process. As we share intimately the perspectives that I bring, that you bring into any equation to expand the borders of what it is that we both can discover in our being. Ciao for now. It's been a delight, and we will see you next week.